Assalamu alaikum. So we haven't been doing fiqh for a long while, so I thought we would start with that and then continue talking about Jannah, inshallah, later on. So man amma qawman yakrahunahu. So in terms of leading the salah, should a person lead the salah on people that don't want him to lead the salah? Let's look at these ahadith. So there are a number of ahadith that do actually caution a person from leading a prayer when the people don't want him to lead. Well, that's a very important thing. If people don't want you to lead, if people just don't want you to be the person in the forefront, respect people's choices. Okay, respect people's choices. So that's why the Prophet ﷺ, look at this hadith, it was narrated by Ibn Abbas. What did he say? He said, ثلاثة لا ترفع صلاتهم فوق رؤوسهم شبرا رجل أما قوما وهم له كارهون وامرأة باتت وزوجها عليها ساخط وأخوان متصارمان. Let's look at this hadith, you guys. This is really important. 3 people, their salah would not even go beyond their heads, not shibr. Shibr is going to be like a short distance. In other words, it's not even going to get not even near the sky. Number 1 is a man that was an imam at a certain people, but they despised, they didn't like that he would be their imam. And a woman that would sleep and her husband is angry at her. Her salah would not even go beyond her head. وَأَخَوَانِ مُتَصَارِمًا. And 2 brothers that are fighting with each other. In other words, they're fighting with each other or they're not talking to each other. Their salah would not go beyond them. I want you to look at this. قال العراقي إسناده حسن. Who's al-Iraqi? Al-Iraqi, yes, his name is al-Iraqi, but guess where al-Iraqi studied, ladies? Al-Iraqi studied a lot of his studies in Somalia. Yep, he was actually studying a lot with a scholar from Zayla. So he was, let's say, Somali trained. This is important to keep in mind. So yes, Al-Hafidh al-Iraqi is a great scholar, but he also learned from Zaylai. Let's see, here's another hadith. Abdullah ibn Amr, he basically said that the Prophet ﷺ said, ثلاثة لا يقبل الله منهم صلاة من تقدم قوما وهم له كارهون ورجل أتى الصلاة دبارا ورجل اعتبد محرره. So what happened? This is that 3 Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not accept their salah. Whoever comes forward to lead people and they don't want him. رَجُلٌ أَتَى الصَّلَاةَ دِبَارًا. A man comes to the salah when it just passed. It's like, you're so late. Why are you always coming late? And a man who basically enslaved the person that he had freed. You enslaved him again. You freed him. Why are you enslaving him again? Now, one thing is that when we speak about leading a salah, so how do we know if people don't want you? Well, they could show that they don't want you to lead. Is that the same with a khutbah? Well, if that is the same with a khutbah, to make a ceremony, to lead, give people their space. If they don't want you to be the person to lead, give them their space, don't lead.
Give us some details. What does it mean? Maybe they don't like what you see with what you see in the video.
No, there's a difference. There's a difference when we're talking about leading. Maybe they don't like your voice. Maybe they don't want you to lead. They have just a couple issues. If they don't want you to lead their salah, then don't do it. What if that person was hired as an imam? That person was hired as an imam, then he's the one that's supposed to be leading the salah. All right, the person that is hired, he's the one that's supposed to be leading the salah. There's always going to be some opposition and some people that just don't like someone. All right, there's always going to be that. Some people, they don't even know the person, and they will just have some stereotypes about that person and just oppose without even knowing the person's views, right? So that situation, you want to look at the salah in general and see, is it just an opposition just for maybe a racist problem, or why are they opposing this? But if that person is the person assigned to be the imam, he can go forward and actually lead. Well, but in general, if they don't want you to lead, well, that's a sign that maybe you should find another place at least to lead in.
Does it have to be the majority of people that don't like you? Well, even if it's just 2 people out of
Majority, we're talking about the majority. You're always going to have someone that's opposing you, that's not liking you, always. I've had people that contacted me just to tell me that they don't like me. Wallahi al-azim, I've had people that just contacted me that just said, we don't like you. I'm like, thank you very much. Have you ever been to any of my lectures? No, but I know I don't like you. Okay.
Exactly. If you don't know that,
It happens. It happens. You know, those are the people that get your sincerity in place. Those are the people that get your sincerity in place for you to be humble, to learn, and to have some people that are just not going to like you. That's it. Yeah. All right. So let's continue this. So now in terms of if we were to have one person leading the salah, if we're talking about men, women, they all stand together in one line. Okay. For Malikiya, there's no such thing as a woman leading prayer, period. Not even with women. There's no such thing. For Maliki, there's no such thing as a women's jama'ah. There's no such thing as a woman leading the women's jama'ah. No, we're talking about a woman leading a prayer, not even for women.
I know. So even if it's just all
that's if there's no man to lead the prayer, then they would just basically pray each on their own.
Okay.
All right. But the majority, no, they disagreed with it. The majority that a woman can lead women in salah, but she would stand in the middle. She would stand in the middle. So she wouldn't stand alone, but she would stand in the middle. All right. So here's the hadith. قام رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ليصلي فجئت فقمت على يساره فأخذ بيدي فأدارني حتى أقامني عن يمينه ثم جاء جابر بن صخر فقام عن يسار رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فأخذ بأيدينا جميعا فدفعنا حتى أقامنا خلفه. So what happened? Jabir, all right, here's a hadith Jabir, that the Prophet ﷺ stood, and then basically Jabir stood at the left of the Prophet ﷺ. So then the Prophet ﷺ took his hand, held his hand, and then he put him on to his right, that is onto the Prophet ﷺ's right. Right, and then Jabir ibn Sakhr, so another Jabir came. Jabir ibn Sakhr came and he stood at the left of the Prophet ﷺ. So the Prophet ﷺ took both Jabirs, Jabir ibn Abdullah and Jabir ibn Sakhr, and he basically lined them up behind him. Right? So if it's one person in a man's group, the man would stand next to the imam on the right. If it's more than one, they would both go back and line behind the imam. So what do I mean by behind the imam? Let's put this as the imam, okay? Okay, my hand is, okay, that's it. My fingers are not happy today. All right, so let's just assume this is the imam, okay? All right, where does the line actually start? Not from here. The line doesn't start from here. The line starts from behind the imam. And then you start filling the right side, and then you start filling the left side. Got it? So the line actually starts from behind the imam. All right. This is just a little clarification. All right. So إذا حضرت المرأة الجماعة وقفت وحدها خلف الرجال ولا تصف معهم فإن خالفت صحت صلاتها عند الجمهور أو صحت صلاتها مفعول به. All right. So what happened? What if a woman were to actually come in? Does she line up with the men? No. She would basically stand alone and form her own line. What if this woman didn't know and she basically stood next to them? The salah is sahiha according to the majority. But she basically had left the sunnah. Anas, who's Anas? Anas ibn Malik. Anas ibn Malik. What do you guys know about Anas ibn Malik? Who knows anything about Anas ibn Malik?
His mom raised him by herself.
His mom raised him
By herself.
by herself. What happened to his dad?
He left them.
He left them. Where did he go? He went to Bilad al-Sham. He went to Syria. He ran away. Ran away.
But he did not love his wife, right?
Well, he abandoned his wife and children.
Yeah.
And basically abandoned the wife and the children. And Anas ibn Malik has a brother. What's his name? Al-Bara. Al-Bara. All right. So Anas, the Prophet ﷺ, his mom, or Anas ibn Malik, Anas ibn Malik's mom would always bring Anas ibn Malik to the Prophet ﷺ. He was like Khadim al-Rasul ﷺ. He was like the Prophet ﷺ's personal helper. All right. So he would come over, help the Prophet ﷺ, and learn from the Prophet ﷺ. Oh, Anas ibn Malik learned a lot from the Prophet ﷺ. In fact, the Prophet ﷺ made the dua for him that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would give him a lot of offsprings. He had more than 110 grandchildren and children. All right. So that was Anas ibn Malik. Anas ibn Malik, when the Prophet ﷺ died, he was almost 12 years old.
I think he read the Quran when he was like 5 years old.
No, because the Quran was not even complete. So Anas ibn Malik died almost 110 years old. The Prophet ﷺ made dua for him that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would give him a long life. And he died at 110 years old. All right, so he said, صليت أنا ويتيم في بيتنا خلف النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وأمي أم سليم خلفنا. So who's his mom? Sulaym. Sulaym, he said, I prayed and another orphan was in our home behind the Prophet ﷺ, and Sulaym, my mother Sulaym, was behind us. He said in another narration, فصففت أنا واليتيم خلفه والعجوز من ورائنا. Called his mom Ajuz? Okay. Oh, really? Okay. So he said, فصففت, then we were lined up, me and the other orphan child, right behind the Prophet ﷺ, and the al-Ajuz, which basically is referring to Sulaym, the older woman, was behind us. You could see this hadith is actually narrated in al-Bukhari and Muslim. Yeah, so called her al-Ajuz. Okay. In the Palestinian culture, this is very condescending to call a woman Ajuz. It's a condescending term. All right, but it can be descriptive. So that's it. So when we would talk about the line, where does it start? Right behind the Imam. وَصِّتُوا الْإِمَامِ وَسَدِّدُوا الْخَلَلِ. This is the hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said, وَصِّتُوا الْإِمَامِ. What does وَصِّتُوا means? Put the Imam in the middle. وَسُدُّوا الْخَلَلِ. Al-Khalal means every gap in the salah, close it. How do you close the gap? By someone else. Yeah, getting closer, put someone else in there. And here, رواه أبو داود وسكت عنه هو والمنذري. So Abu Dawud is Abu Dawud. Abu Dawud is a scholar in hadith. His name is Abu Dawud al-Sajistani. When it says sakata anhu, that's because Abu Dawud, in his conditions for hadith, he made a note, like a report or a risala. It was called Risalat Abu Dawud. And he said that if he stays quiet about a hadith, that means it is a considerable narration, meaning it's an authentic or at least near authentic. And al-Mundhiri is a later scholar who actually went over the hadith. Ibn Mas'ud, لِيَلْيَنِي مِنْكُمْ أُولُو الْأَحْلَامِ وَالنُّهَى ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُمْ ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُمْ وَإِيَّاكُمْ وَهَيْشَاتِ الْأَسْوَاقِ. Listen to this one. that the Prophet ﷺ said, let the ones to actually be coming after me, in other words, behind me, or ulul ahlam, the ones that get dreams. What? So the people that get, no, this is not talking about dreams. This is when boys actually reach a certain age, their bodies start producing, of course, certain things, certain hormones, etc., and that actually marks that they had reached the age of puberty, and that's why it's basically something that they would also be seen within their dreams, of course, which is called a wet dream. Okay, وَالنُّهَى. So in that situation, the Prophet ﷺ was basically telling you the ones to line up first in the salah are the ones that had reached the age of puberty, not the children, but the ones that reached the age of puberty, and an-nuha. An-nuha, basically the ones they're capable of understanding. An-nuha are basically the ones capable of understanding. In other words, it's also telling us that when we even give speech and we give priority, even at home, learn how to respect the elder. Learn how to respect those that are older. Don't speak beyond them. Don't even line up in salah before them. Respecting the elders is actually considered as sunnah in Islam. And teaching that to our children is important, whether letting them walk in the door first, going into the car first, sitting in the living room or whatever it is first, starting to eat, talking. Don't disrespect the elders. Well, so that's why he was basically telling and teaching the Sahaba, even when it's a prayer you're lining up for, if there's an elder person, let them come first. وَإِيَّاكُمْ وَهَيْشَاتِ الْأَسْوَاقِ. What is وَإِيَّاكُمْ وَهَيْشَاتِ الْأَسْوَاقِ? It's like stay away from Hayshat al-Aswaq. What is Hayshat al-Aswaq? Hayshat al-Aswaq are basically the different sounds and the different fights that people would engage in the market. They're probably fighting over maybe a bargain or etc. But it's like, don't do that at the masajid. The masajid are not a place for you to fight in. The masjid has its sanctity, and therefore, even if you disagree, don't do it in the masjid. Don't do it in the masjid. All right. Let's continue the different hadith, inshallah, that regard to what about the children and the women. The Prophet ﷺ, he would actually let the children as well. So يجعل الرجال قدام الغلمان. That the Prophet ﷺ would even line up the men in the line that is before the children's line, and then the women's line would be at the end. Now that's the Prophet ﷺ said, خير صفوف الرجال أولها. The best of the lines for the men to line up in are basically the first lines, and then the worst of those lines is basically the ending lines. So if you line up in the salah, line up the first lines. Now here's one thing: it doesn't mean you shove. It doesn't mean you budge. Basically means if you want to come early, you want to line up in the first lines, well, you come early, right? You come early, you line up in the first lines. The women's lines, they would basically be at the ending. Oh, let's see. I think we're gonna go first. What about making taswiyat al-sufuf? What is it, taswiyat al-sufuf? Taswiyat al-sufuf is basically when you're fixing the lines and you're closing the little gaps in the lines, all right? So it is actually liked that the imam would fix the lines and make sure that they're closing the gaps before even starting the salah. So Anas, he said that the Prophet ﷺ كان يقبل علينا بوجهه قبل أن يكبر فيقول تراصوا واعتدلوا. The Prophet ﷺ, he would turn around when he's about to start the salah, turn around, look at them, and say tarasu. Tarasu means get near to each other. Wa'tadilu. Wa'tadilu, in other words, straighten the lines. اعتدلوا, straighten the lines. You could see this hadith is narrated by Bukhari and Muslim. And we said Bukhari and Muslim are basically considered the highest level of authentic hadith. They're basically here muttafaqun عليه. So here's another narration that the Prophet ﷺ said, سَوُّوا صُفُوفَكُمْ فَإِنَّ تَسْوِيَةَ الصَّفِّ مِنْ تَمَامِ الصَّلَاةِ. The Prophet ﷺ said, straighten up the lines or the rows, for straightening the rows is part of completing the prayer. Straighten up the rows is part of completing the prayers. Notice that this hadith is also in Bukhari and Muslim. All right, let's see another hadith. Nu'man ibn Bashir, he said, كان الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم يسوينا في الصفوف كما يقوم القدح حتى إذا ظن أن قد أخذنا ذلك عنه وفقهنا أقبل ذات يوم الوجه إذا رجل منتبذ بصدره فقال لا تسون صفوفكم أو ليخالفن الله بين وجوهكم. So what does that mean? Let's see. That Nu'man ibn Bashir, just an idea about Nu'man ibn Bashir. Nu'man ibn Bashir, he was one of the earliest ones to actually be born in Medina from the Muslims. What happened? When the Muslims migrated to Medina, there was a rumor, and the Jews were saying, we had done magic on you. You're never going to get kids here. In other words, you guys are going to die out. You're not going to have any offsprings. That's the end of you. We've done magic for all the Muslims here. You're not going to get kids. Okay. Now, for a while, not a Muslim baby born was born. And that did spread amongst the Muslims, like that's it. Where somehow, what do they call that? We've got a spell. Nu'man bin Bashir and Abdullah ibn Umar al-Khattab were the firstborn. So that revived the hope in the Muslims that there isn't a spell. You know, at the end of the day is that even though they're Muslim, but you know, so sometimes it can happen. You're starting to doubt yourself. Like, maybe there is a spell. Is at the end of my future? What happens? So Nu'man ibn Bashir was one of the earliest to be born, along with Abdullah ibn Umar. So he said that the Prophet ﷺ used to line them up, and he would actually fix the lines as if he was actually fixing like a bow and arrow. And then until he basically thought, well, everybody got the hang of it. Now they know that they're supposed to line up right. All right. And then when he thought that they got the hang of it, and wafaqihna, it's like, we understood it, it's going to line up, we need to fix it. One day he came to the masjid and he recognized that a man was muntabidun bisadrihi. It's like he was in the line, but obviously one man was ahead of the line a little bit, where his chest was actually obviously not really in the line. The Prophet ﷺ then said, you would fix the lines, or the Lord Almighty would create division between your faces. What is division between your faces? This is a metaphor. In other words, if you don't line up in straight lines, at the end of the day, the effect is going to be that you'll basically have different visions. You'll basically have different paths. You'll basically start having different divisions within your line. In other words, disunity is going to be the implication. Disunity is going to be the implication. And you're going to start not being a united ummah. So maybe we need to fix our lines. Start and fix our lines and figure that one out. رواه الخمسة. والخمسة. Let's say Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawud, الترمذي, النسائي, وابن ماجه. Those are الخمسة. We talked about these, right? Right? We talked about Bukhari. What's his name?
Abu Hajar al-Asqalani.
No, al-Bukhari. Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, he actually died in the 9th century, 868 Hijriya. Bukhari died 259 Hijriya, so way before. Way before. Al-Bukhari was one of the earliest scholars of Hadith, Muhammad ibn Ismail al-Bukhari. Muslim, was he Imam Muslim? Muslim, basically from Samarkand. Imam Muslim was actually also the student of Imam al-Bukhari. For al-Malikis, they would regard Imam Muslim, his ahadith, as being superior to al-Bukhari's ahadith. Abu Dawood is Sajistani, from Sajistan, so we're looking at part of Iran. Tirmidhi, part of Uzbekistan. Nasa'i used to live in Egypt. Ibn Majah al-Qazwini, I believe Qazwin is going to be also Uzbekistan. By the way, Uzbekistan had a lot of scholars. It's really important to mention. Uzbekistan was considered a main place for the Muslim scholars of Hadith. A main place. So even al-Bukhari and Imam Muslim were from Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan, we need to visit that one day, right? Right? Uzbekistan was considered a main place for ilm al-hadith. All right, ever heard of Uzbekistan? Did you ever meet anybody from Uzbekistan?
No, I watched a documentary about kids that were memorizing Quran in the competition, and they showed one
Uzbekistan?
of them from there.
Yep, from Uzbekistan. Yes, we need to learn more about Uzbekistan and actually see and learn more about them. All right, so let's see. The Prophet ﷺ, how do we line up the lines? سَوُّوا صُفُوفَكُمْ وَحَاذُوا بَيْنَ مَنَاكِبِكُمْ. And what are we supposed to do? So سَوُّوا صُفُوفَكُمْ, line up, and حَاذُوا بَيْنَ الْمَنَاكِبِ. الْمَنَاكِب are the shoulders. In other words, let the shoulder be lined up next to the shoulder, and you would have to fix that line in trying to put together the shoulder next to the shoulder, the heel next to the heel. The heel next to the heel. Do you do that, Hudayfa? The heel next to the heel next to you? Yes? Okay, good. So the shoulder next to the shoulder, the heel next to the heel. Let's see. Are there any differences between the first lines and the last lines? So let's see. The Prophet ﷺ actually said, if people would have known what would be in nida. What is in nida? The call to the prayer. The call to the prayer, and what reward there is for the first line, but then they would all come together, let's just assume, all right, and then they only had one option to line up in those lines, is by making a draw, by making a draw. So here, ثُمَّ لَمْ يَجِدُوا إِلَّا أَنْ يَسْتَهْمُوا عَلَيْهَا لَاسْتَهْمُوا. You know what istahmu is, Zainab? You know what istahmu means? So at the time, to make a draw, they didn't used to write the names. They didn't have available papers like today. All right. So they would basically use their own bow and arrows as a way to choose a draw. All right. So it's like, if it's your bow and arrow, then you would come first. Okay. So this is lastahmu. All right. And this is تقدموا فأتموا بي وليأتم بكم من وراءكم ولا يزال قوم يتأخرون حتى يؤخرهم الله عز وجل. So the Prophet ﷺ actually said, come forward and let the ones that come later actually mimic the ones that come after. Remember, they didn't have any microphones. So this one would see what the line in the front is doing, and they would mimic them. It's like, okay, now it's time for ruku', time for sujood. And the Prophet ﷺ said that there are going to be people, they're going to keep on coming late until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala delays them later on. Nas'Allah al-afwa wal-afiyah. All right. So let's see the hadith. The Prophet ﷺ, Inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala alladhina yusalluna ala mayamin as-sufuf. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the malaika yusallun ala mayamin as-sufuf. What does it mean that the malaika yusalluna ala mayamin as-sufuf? The malaika would pray on them, or what was that supposed to mean? So al-malaika, when the malaika pray for you or on you, it's not that they're using you as something to pray on, but this is that the malaika are praying for you, asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive you. Asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive you. Yes, salam. All right, let's continue. Did we actually do the masajid? Let's do the masajid. For the masajid, what's a masjid? What's a masjid? A masjid comes from the root sajada. So a masjid is the place of sujood. The masjid is the place of sujood. What are certain things we're not supposed to do in the masjid? Number one, we're not supposed to have our voices loud in the masjid. Why? Because the masjid is supposed to be a place for dhikr, reading Quran, praying. When you're first coming to the masjid, you do tahiyat al-masjid. What is tahiyat al-masjid? 2 rak'ahs. Even if it was during the time of al-karaha, like during Salat al-Asr, right after Salat al-Asr, but I already prayed. Even if it's during the time of al-karaha, pray tahiyat al-masjid because there is a reason for it. Oh? So even if you come during the time is setting, you would still come. The masajid, unfortunately, lost their sanctity because the Muslims had lost the ilm of how to deal and how to live in the masajid. The masajid are not at all a place of playing or a place of arguing. Al-masjid has its sanctity. All right? Al-masjid is called the masjid because it is a place for sujood. It's a place for sujood. So the Prophet ﷺ, basically right there, the Prophet ﷺ actually said that al-ard is tahura. Yes, a person can pray anywhere on earth, but al-masjid, wherever you would put a masjid, that's also a place that is considered having a special sanctity. Now, this is important. There is a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ actually said, if a person were to build a masjid, even if it's as the size of mafhasi qatat. What is al-mafhasi qatat? Even if it was the size of the nest of a pigeon, even if it's the nest of a pigeon, but that's what you're capable of building a masjid, that's the amount you're capable of building in any contribution to building a masjid, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would actually build you a bayt fil jannah. Yes, salam. Oh, even if I saw a masjid in somewhere in Africa, but it was a masjid that was built of hay. Imagine, you guys, this person, they just built a masjid. That's all they could afford. They built a masjid made of hay. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because they built a masjid made of hay, that's what they could afford. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is building them a house or a castle in Jannah. Imagine that. They didn't have the millions, didn't have the billions, but they did something which from very, very small resources. Imagine you would go line up in the Jannah, and this person, what did you do? Well, I built a masjid from hay. That only fits 2 people. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will consider it as a masjid that they had built. It's like, well, they still did it. That's all they could afford, and they did it. So contributing in the masjid, what if I can't build a masjid? Contributing in the masjid, donating for the masjid, would also mean that you are building a masjid. Oh, this masjid is actually behind with their contribution. So if somebody would donate generously to this masjid. They're trying hard. What I like about this masjid, more than any other masjid, to be honest, they don't have these divisions that other masajid have. West Africans are really nice people, aren't they? Not that North Africans, we'll talk about those later, right? I'm just joking.
We're talking about the
Division, there you go, exactly. I'm talking about division. So I shouldn't be picking on them, right? Exactly. That's not a division, exactly. There you go. What?
Maybe they're a small community.
You know, I mean, alhamdulillah, yani, you'll find salihin all over. You'll find salihin all over. But to be honest, I think the Muslim Ummah, maybe because we're a smaller number in the Eastern and North Africa, that the Western side of Africa, probably many times they're I would say marginalized within our community. And that's quite sad, right? They're really marginalized. But when you get closer to them, you really find that they're very nice and sweet people. And I think the Ummah really needs to take away all that racism. I was just joking because my husband's from North Africa. I was just joking about that, but no. At the end of the day, wallahi, I think we really need to learn how to bring in unity. How to bring in unity, how to and I think it's important that get to know the person next to you during Salah, the person next to you, you know, get to know where she's from, who she is, and all of that. Wallahi, I've seen Muslims from all around the world. And subhanAllah, you've got salihin from all around the world. Just learn they'll teach you how to be humble, wallahi. Teach you how to be humble. And, you know, the salah and how you line up in the masjid is one way to help you create that unity. One way to help you create that unity. And to be honest, mashallah, I mean, this masjid, they're really working hard, predominantly from West Africa. I'm really working hard to make this masjid. They didn't pay me to actually say this, but they didn't. They did not. They did not. But I know that they're working really hard. I know they're working really hard to make it happen. All right. So let's see. The first masjid to be built on earth was al-Masjid al-Haram. Was it called Haram? Because it's haram. So al-Masjid al-Haram. Al-Haram means an area of sanctity. An area of sanctity. An area where it's like a red zone. Right? It's very restricted in how you and what you do in it. All right? What you do in it. Same thing. Why is pork haram? Not because it's an area of sanctity. That's a red line. Don't even approach, right? So when we say Masjid al-Haram, it's like it's an area where it's a red zone. There are a lot of restrictions on how you respect that red zone, all right? Then which masjid? Al-Masjid al-Aqsa. Where's al-Masjid al-Aqsa? Palestine. طب كويس حافظين. Al-Masjid al-Aqsa, of course, right? But al-Masjid al-Aqsa, all al-Masjid al-Aqsa is not necessarily the building that you see with the golden dome. That's part of al-Masjid al-Aqsa. That's not the exclusive place for al-Masjid al-Aqsa. So the other areas, all that court is, or the campus around al-Masjid al-Aqsa is part of al-Masjid al-Aqsa. So how long were these two masajid, you know, how long, and what is the amount of years, yarhamkumullah, between them? He said 40 years. But at the end of the day, أينما أدركتك الصلاة فصلي فهو مسجد. Wherever you get to the prayer time, whenever you get to the prayer time, then pray, because at the end of the day, then that's a place of a masjid. So you can't say, well, I don't want to pray, even if it's a woman. You can pray in public. This is a very common thing that people think that a woman can't pray in public. Just make sure that when you want to pray in public, make sure that you're in an area where, let's say, as modest and preserved as possible, okay? Because you don't want to be bending in front of everyone, all right? So just be in a place that is most modest and in a corner that's most modest as possible. Because at the end of the day, it's all a masjid. Let's see this hadith. Man bana lillahi masjidan yabtaghi bihi wajha Allah. بنى الله له بيتا في الجنة. Whoever builds a masjid seeking the face of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is this a literal thing? It's a metaphor. Seeking the face of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually means you seek the cause for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So can I worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the sake of Jannah? If I worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the sake of Jannah, is that being sincere? Or am I supposed to know? I need to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the sake of Allah.
That's one of the reasons. So
That's not a contradiction.
yeah, it's not.
So you can worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the sake of Jannah, because you know that the get to Jannah is by seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Him being content over you. So there's no contradictory. I get this question often. That's why I'm answering it. I know you'll find some questions, you'll find it like really someone would actually ask that question. Yes, I've had people actually ask this question and think that they weren't being sincere because what they really wanted was Jannah. It's like, no, there's no contradictory. All right, here's the hadith that I was talking about. من بنى لله مسجدا ولو كمفحص قطاط لبيضها بنى الله له بيتا في الجنة. Look at this hadith. Whoever builds a masjid for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even if it is as big as what a pigeon would lay an egg on, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would build them a house in Jannah. So even if you were to contribute, even if you didn't build the whole thing by yourself, you contributed to build a masjid, you would actually get the reward for it. You would get the reward for it, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would build you a house in Jannah. All right. When we go to the masjid, what should we say? When you enter the masjid, let's see, Salama, not Sulaim. Sulaim, Anas ibn Malik. Salama is who? Hind. Her name is Hind. The Prophet's wife. كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا خرج من بيته قال بسم الله توكلت على الله اللهم إني أعوذ بك أن أضل أو أضل أو أزل أو أزل أو أظلم أو أظلم أو أجهل أو يجهل علي. Salama said that the Prophet when he would leave his home, he would say, in the name of Allah. What does it mean, in the name of Allah? I start by the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If it wasn't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala giving me the power to do this, I would not have been capable of doing it. Tawakkaltu ala Allah. What is tawakkaltu ala Allah? I depend on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Oh Allah, I seek refuge in you from me getting misguided or misguiding others. From me getting into a delusion or deluding others. Or zalla is more to commit a sin or cause others to commit a sin. From me oppressing others or me or others oppressing me, or others oppressing me. أو أجهل أو يجهل عليه. From me transgressing on others and others transgressing on me. What does that even mean? Let's look at it. So you're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when you go to the masjid, you're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not to be a person that's deluding others, that's committing a transgression, that's harming others. And you're also asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you also would not be deluding, not be a cause to delude others, and not be a cause to harming others, and not be a cause to somehow be a reason why others are committing a sin. Well, why? Because you can be without you knowing. Let's do the dua together. Should we read it together? Let's do it. Bismillah. Tawakkaltu ala Allah. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika an adilla aw udal aw azilla aw uzal aw azlima أو أظلم أو أجهل أو يجهل علي. I love this hadith.
Is it only for masjid or?
So you can make that dua at other times as well. You can do this hadith because it's a comprehensive hadith. It's a comprehensive hadith, but the Prophet ﷺ would make this dua whenever he would go to the masjid. You know, there are certain times you can make the dua. You can make the dua. It would be the sunnah to do it at designated times, but can it be a comprehensive dua where I could make it during time of qunut? Yes, you can. All right, you can. But it's a very important hadith to memorize. Bismillah tawakkaltu ala Allah. And اللهم إني أعوذ بك أن أضل أو أضل أو أزل أو أزل أو أظلم أو أظلم أو أجهل أو يجهل علي. All right? Why? Because you also don't want to be a factor for misleading others, misguiding others, oppressing others, or transgressing on others. We usually just focus on others not harming us, and we don't usually recognize that we were a factor, we were a cause for probably harming others. Can I make the dua in English? You can make the dua in English. It's better if you memorize it in Arabic, but if you don't memorize it in Arabic and you memorize it in English, you could also do it in English. That would be good. All right. So can we just translate it? Yes, you can. So let's see, for the sisters who pray in public, should we prioritize having our backs against the wall, or should we always face the Qibla? You should always face the Qibla, my dear. Facing the Qibla is a priority. Facing the Qibla is a priority. Let's see. But then, you know, try to find a place where you are hidden as much as you can. All right, let's see this hadith. The Prophet ﷺ, من قال إذا خرج من بيته بسم الله توكلت على الله ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله يقال له حسبك هديت وكفيت ووقيت وتنحى عنه الشيطان. يا سلام. So the Prophet ﷺ in this hadith, whoever said Bismillah توكلت على الله ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. So if this hadith was hard for you to memorize, that's an easier one. Bismillah توكلت على الله ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. If you just said Bismillah, I depend on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and there's no power beyond the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then the malaika would say, you had given enough, you had said enough, and you had been guided to the best of the words, and you had been protected, and shaitan would go away. Should we try doing that one? That's an easier one, right? Right? For somebody that doesn't speak Arabic, that's an easier one. Let's do it. Bismillah tawakkaltu ala Allah wala hawla wala quwwata illa billah. So Bismillah tawakkaltu ala Allah wala hawla wala quwwata illa billah. There she goes. She memorized it from first time. Zainab, do you know how to say it? Say it. I saw you peeking. She did it. Can you say it?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Hudayfa, can you say it? Yeah. Try. Bismillah. تعرف? Say it.
بسم الله توكلت على الله لا
Go
حول
ahead.
ولا
Maisa.
قوة إلا بالله.
بسم الله توكلت على الله ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. Did anybody memorize the one on top? بسم الله توكلت على الله.
ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله.
Good job. Who else can who else, you know what? Read it off the wall. It's okay. Go ahead, Lujay.
بسم الله توكلت على الله اللهم
You can get help from Maisa.
إني أعوذ بك أن أضل
And أضل
أو أضل
أن أضل أو أضل. Try, keep going.
أو أضل
أو
أو أزل
أزل
أو أزل
أظلمون
أو أظلم
أو أظلم
أو أظلم
أو أظلم أو
أو
أجهل أو يجهل عليه.
Maisam, can you do it? Yeah. Too small. Get closer. That's okay. You didn't get her eyes checked يا ضحى الله يهديك يا رب.
يا شو قد كلهم نهزهم.
اوكي زيهم خلص بالليل.
يا ما ياش زمان ولا.
اوكي يلا يا عروسة. بسم الله.
في بصري
بسم
في سمعي
الله توكلت على الله.
لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله.
اللهم
إني أعوذ بك أن أضل
أن أضل أو أضل
أو أزل أو أزل أو أظلم
أو أظلم أو أظلم أو أجهل أو يجهل عليه. Let's go for a longer one. This one is actually my favorite. This one is my favorite. Look at this hadith. The Prophet ﷺ, this hadith is narrated by Bukhari and Muslim. Allahumma ij'al fi qalbi noora. You guys, put your hand so you could see it and you could visualize it. Allahumma ij'al fi qalbi noora. Wa fi basari noora. وفي سمعي نورا وعن يميني نورا ومن خلفي نورا وفي عصبي نورا وفي لحمي نورا وفي دمي نورا وفي شعري نورا وفي بشري نورا. So beautiful. Let me explain this. Ya Allah, let there be light in my heart and light in my sight and light in my hearing and light on my right and light on my behind me and light on my nerves and light in my flesh and light in my blood and light in my hair and light on my skin. Ooh, this is so beautiful.
Amen.
Ameen. This is so beautiful. So beautiful. Let's see this one. اللهم اجعل في قلبي نورا وفي لساني نورا واجعل في سمعي نورا وفي بصري نورا واجعل من خلفي نورا ومن أمامي نورا واجعل من فوقي نورا ومن تحتي نورا اللهم أعطني نورا. This one's even more beautiful. Let's see. Ya Allah, let there be light in my heart and light in my tongue and light in my hearing and light in my sight and light from behind me and light from in front of me and light from above me and light from underneath me and grant me light. So the word light is two things. Light to mean guidance, it's a metaphor, and light to mean also protection, and light to also mean, we said guidance, protection, and light to also mean literally light. When is that? That's on Judgment Day, like in Surah Al-Hadid. The mu'mineen would be standing in light. Why? Because there's going to be darkness. And the Prophet ﷺ actually said, بَشِّرِ الْمَشَّائِينَ فِي الظُّلَمِ إِلَى الْمَسَاجِدِ بِالنُّورِ التَّامِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. So for those that would go to the masjid during the dark, so Maghrib and Isha, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because they're walking during the dark to the masjid, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on Judgment Day would actually give them complete light. Complete light on Judgment Day. When it's all dark on Judgment Day, they would have their own light. The munafiqeen would be there and say, look, we're getting some of that light is coming on us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, go back. You can get some of their light. So here you're actually asking, technically, you're actually asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would bring the light of guidance into your heart, the light of guidance onto your tongue. Why? Because so you can eat the food right now. So you can say the right words. وَفِي لِسَانِ نُورًا وَاجْعَلْ فِي سَمْعِي نُورًا. When the light is in the ears, what happens? You start glowing with light. You need a flashlight in your ears? No, this is not talking about that. This is that you're hearing the words of guidance. Because when you don't hear the words of guidance, it's basically words of darkness. وَفِي بَصَرِي نُورًا. And in my eyes, there be light. So what's going to happen? Now that would look spooky, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it be looking spooky if you actually had your eyes glowing with light? Terminator 2?
Yeah.
Arnold Schwarzenegger? No, this is not talking about that. All right, this is not talking about Terminator. This is talking about that you would have light in your eyes. You'll be capable of distinguishing right from wrong. It's a metaphor, right? This has nothing to do with Arnold Schwarzenegger. You guys know Arnold Schwarzenegger? Is that during my time? Is that old-fashioned? Van Damme? Old-fashioned?
Yeah.
Old-fashioned? Okay, I'm way,
Yeah.
way
Schwarzenegger, I think,
Rambo.
right?
By the way, you guys,
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you something really funny.
Terminator 2. Schwarzenegger. Yeah.
You guys don't know?
Terminator 2, yeah.
Okay, okay. By the way, I used to be called Rambo at school. I know I don't look Sylvester Stallone or any of those people, but yeah, I was called Rambo at school. That was my nickname. My nickname at school here in America was Rambo. Rambo. You know, the fighter, that guy always gets abandoned by American soldiers. Yeah. All right. وَجَعَلْ مِنْ خَلْفِي نُورًا, from behind me, Nura. Why? So it's again, it's all really a metaphor. مِنْ خَلْفِي نُورًا, all that you leave behind is always full of light. Many people would actually die, and what they had left behind is light, is guidance to others. When people would remember them, they would remember all the good things that they had contributed. All that was left behind them. They would only remember the good things that they had left behind, the guidance that they had left behind. وَمِنْ أَمَامِي نُورًا, and there are others, even when they had been deceased, they would still be right in front of them, Nura. It can also be a literal thing, where from behind you, you are full of light all the time. وَمِن تَحْتِي نُورًا, underneath you, Nura. Allahumma a'tini Nura. Allahumma ameen. Memorize one of these. And if you don't know them in order, say it even randomly. All right? Say it even randomly. So if you just don't know the order and you were like, Ya Allah, I remember the light in my tongue, the light in my eyes, the light in my ears, the light in my heart, the light in my brain, the light in my cells, the light in my blood, the light in my flesh, etc. If you memorize that, say it in your own words. Say it in your own words. Even if you don't memorize it in that order, say it in your own words. Right, Hudhaifa? All right, let's continue. So going to the masjid, من غدا إلى المسجد وراح أعد الله له الجنة نزلا كلما غدا وراح. Whoever, now the word غدا actually means to go early. الروحة is to go at the end of times. So if you would go to the masjid and you would come back, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would prepare Jannah nuzula. What is it, nuzul? Like you would have hotels or places of stay. Places of stay. Every time you would actually go to the masjid and come back. The Prophet ﷺ said, إِذَا رَأَيْتُمُ رَجُلًا يَعْتَادُ الْمَسْجِدَ فَاشْهَدُوا لَهُ بِالْإِيمَانِ. If you would see a man coming and going back and forth to the masjid, then witness that that person is a believer. Then witness that that person is a believer. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it says, إِنَّمَا يَعْمُرُ مَسَاجِدَ اللَّهِ مَنْ آمَنَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ. The true ones to here, يَعْمُرُ, this is not to mean to build. This is to mean that they would be there always at the masjid. Who are the ones to be in the masjid? Those that really have faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the inside. Sah Hudhaifa? Right? They'll be praying in the masjid. They'll always go to the masjid. To them, that's their place of hangout. That's their place of getting to know the people. That's their place of learning. That's their second home. How many people have the masjid as their second home? Nobody? Is the masjid your second home?
I sleep here.
You sleep here? Okay. Well, a second home doesn't mean a place to sleep. but it means like your place of hangout, your place of where you come frequently. All right, Sister Zainab? Not always.
I come here. I go Saturdays and
Alhamdulillah.
Is Darul Arqam considered the masjid?
It is.
There are 3 musallas there.
Yeah, okay, khalas. Well, yeah, it
Yeah,
is.
that's your second.
It does actually. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it would be considered because the masjid, you also have what's it called? Masjid is a place that Jum'ah and Jama'at happen in. Masjid is Jum'ah and Jama'at. What is Jum'ah? Salat al-Jum'ah. Al-Jama'at mean that they hold frequently Salat Jama'ah there. That would be a masjid, basically. So that's going to be something. Let's see this hadith. Man tatahhara fi baytihi. Whoever would do wudu in his home. And then they would masha ila baytin min buyuti Allah liyaqdi faridatan min fara'id Allah. So whoever would walk to one of the homes to one of the masajid, so they would basically do wudu at home and they would walk to the masjid in order to pray one of the 5 fara'id, one of the 5 prayers. كانت خطواته إحداها تحط خطيئة والأخرى ترفع درجة. Every time they would walk, one step would take away certain sins. The other step would elevate him on a higher level. One step would take away sins. The second step would elevate him. What is elevate? Elevate means to raise. Hudayfa, do you think you can go to the masjid walking? You can. Azidin thinks he can go jumping. Now that's going to get you up higher even. Do you guys go to the masjid walking?
I did it a few times with my dad.
You did it a few times?
Abu Khadra is the closest one to us.
Oh, Abu Khadra is the closest one. But what if we go in a car?
Yeah.
Is that equivalent? It is equivalent.
Yes.
It's equivalent. So you guys are coming from Burnsville? You got even more hasanat than those that are coming from Columbia Heights.
Next time I go to Burnsville, I'm gonna come from
Exactly. Yeah, I'll go that way. And exactly. I'll go to Burnsville and then come back.
Or you move with Shandi.
Oh, exactly. There you go.
Yeah.
All right, let's continue. Tahiyat al-masjid. The Prophet ﷺ said, إذا جاء أحدكم المسجد فليصلي سجدتين من قبل أن يجلس. If you come to the masjid, whether you're a man or you're a woman, before you even sit down, you gotta pray. Here, فليصلي سجدتين. It's not you just make 2 sujood, but this is to mean rak'atayn. All right, this is to mean rak'atayn, to pray 2 rak'ahs. That's the first thing that you should be doing when you come into the masjid. Before you would even sit down. But what if I by mistake sat down? Does that mean I don't have to pray tahiyat al-masjid? Nope, get up and pray tahiyat al-masjid. It's not like, oh no, I sat too late. Nope, get up and pray tahiyat al-masjid. Get up and pray. It's not haram if you skip it. It's a sunnah. The only faridah is basically the 5 daily prayers. All right. What was that?
5 daily prayers are what you have to do.
Yeah.
5 daily prayers you have to do. What's the evidence? A man came to the Prophet ﷺ and he said, what do I have to do? What are the things that I have to and I'm obligated to do? And he said, 5 salawatin fil yawmi wal layla. 5 daily prayers. And he said, do I have to do anything else? He said, illa an tasaddaq. Unless you wanted to voluntarily give more. And he said, what else do I have to do? And he told him about siyam. He said, do I have to do anything else? He said, illa an tasaddaq. Unless you want to voluntarily give more. And he said, okay, do I have to do anything else? And he said, zakah. Once a year. And he said, do I have to do any more? He said, illa an tasaddaq. Illa an tatawwa or illa an tasaddaq. Then he basically said, anything else? He told him, Hajj, once a lifetime. And he said, do I have to do anything else? He said, لِلَّا أَن تَصَدَّقْ or إِلَّا أَن تَطَّوَّعْ. And then he said, do I have to do any more? And the Prophet said in another narration, if I would have said yes, then it would have been obligatory on all of you to do it the whole year. Imagine what is the Muslim population?
6 billion?
Right. Yep. Imagine we're all going to Hajj all together. All right. So let's see this hadith. Palestinians love this hadith. لا تشد الرحال إلا إلى 3 مساجد. المسجد الحرام ومسجدي هذا والمسجد الأقصى. الرحال, what is it, الرحال? That touring and travel is not encouraged but to 3 masajid. المسجد الحرام, the مسجدي هذا, which is in masjid, the Prophet ﷺ's masjid, and the Masjid al-Aqsa. And then scholars, just on a side, scholars actually had differences of opinions on traveling for the sake of tourism. Keep that in mind.
Trend now.
Right now it's a trend. It's like, let's go and touring. Scholars had differences of opinions on that. What was that? No, wallahi, I'm going to go to France to see the Eiffel Tower and start taking photos there and go and get, I don't know, go to their bakeries and start eating and go to Italy and see the Pisa Tower, whatever it is, and all of that, just for the sake of touring. Oh, really? Scholars had differences of opinions on that. Why? Fair enough. Why did they have differences of opinions? Number one is because they considered it as a form of taraf, as a form of luxury. You're spending your money for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's just a form of luxury. And that when you travel, you should travel where it has a cause of either talab al-ilm or da'wah or ibadah. Talab al-ilm, seeking ilm, or worship, or you're giving da'wah. It's also okay for rizq. I've got a business. I'm going for talab al-rizq. It's a difference. Masjid al-Haram.
Trade in Mecca?
No, not in the Kaaba, but outside.
Outside.
Can I go for Hajj and also say I want to make a business? There's nothing wrong with it.
You're doing a Hajj and at the same time you're gonna like.
Yes, why not? Surah Al-Baqarah. Yeah. Surah Al-Baqarah. There's nothing wrong with me, for example, going there and also making a business and business contract and maybe buying a whole hotel.
I heard during Umrah, but not during Hajj.
During Hajj and during Umrah, there's no problem with it. You can actually also go for 2 reasons: a business and also, but you can't get married there while you're in Ihram. You cannot. So let me ask you this. I know you're still in doubt. Let me ask you
I
this.
heard they do so. I don't know.
Let me ask you this. What if during Hajj, I go, and while I was at Hajj, I wanted to buy gifts for the people.
Not gifts, no, I'm not talking about.
This is business. This is conducting business. I'm trading.
No, this is like gaining money, like you're gonna sell and buy,
Same thing. I'm getting, whether it's property or whether it's getting money. The end of the day, it's basically business. I'm conducting business. I'm buying gold. I decided I'm going for Hajj and I'm deciding, hey, the gold price there is cheaper. And I started buying, I don't know, a couple of kilos of gold in order to sell it in the US. Is that business? I'm doing business. Is that haram because I'm going to Hajj? No.
How about the intention though? Does the first intention is to do Hajj? Does that have an importance or no? versus I'm gonna go to do
No,
some
no, no,
business and at the
there's
same
no
time I'm gonna
problem.
do a
There's
Hajj.
no problem with it. If you wanted to conduct business and also do Hajj, there's no contradiction. I'm doing both.
No, you can do it, but not during Hajj. That's what I mean.
No, you
For
can
what
do
I
it
heard, you
even.
can do it when you're going for Umrah. For example, you do your Umrah and then you go trade, it's fine. But during Hajj, like
You
want
can do
to-
it. ما فيش
Ihram,
مشكلة.
it's Ihram, you know, no, you cannot do it.
Even during Ihram, this is not من مبطلات الإحرام. Al-Ihram would not be nullified by engaging in any form of business. It is مبطلات الإحرام if you were to engage in marriage. It's مبطلات الإحرام, but not in business. So if you were muhrim and you also bought gold or you bought or sold merchandise, it's not haram. Let's continue here. زخرفة المساجد. What is زخرفة المساجد? Trying to fix the masajid, do a lot of I guess
Marble and
trying to
decorations.
decorations and decorate the masajid, etc. Now, one thing is that لا تقوم الساعة حتى يتباهى الناس بالمساجد. Part of the signs of Judgment Day, in where الساعة would not actually, الساعة, which is Judgment Day, would not happen until people are just boasting about the masjid and its appearance. Why? Because people would just then be so concerned about the outside and not the inside. Oh, and we could see that. We could see that. The masajid are just about fixing it on the outside. And the inside is empty. And right now, there are certain masajid that are costing like 24 and 50 million and etc. But then you go into the masjid and you see that there's barely any halaqah, any drus. The people there, they're just concerned about fixing it on the outside, but then on the inside,
It's not a futuristic attraction type of thing.
it becomes just a tourist attraction. It becomes just a place for boasting about the appearance of the masjid and not necessarily about what activities are held in it.
Yeah.
I personally like the simple masajid,
Yeah.
because the real ones to actually go to the simple masajid are really the people that are going for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Omar, there's a difference between the small messages that are kind of owned by individuals versus معناتها واحد عملته الدولة وكل شيء. They're kind of different.
I mean, America, in America, we don't actually have any masjid that's done by the
مثلا in America, but all over the world مثلا تمشي لبلدان مسلمة, they put a lot of effort in having
the masajid in most Muslim countries are not actually done by the government. Most Muslim countries, they're actually done by individuals and not the government. Very few masajid are done by the government. Very few.
Saudi
Saudi Arabia is different.
Yeah, the people بتذهب مع doors like doors.
They're not actually gold, they're plated. Yeah, they're not actual gold doors. All right. Cleaning the masjid. Cleaning the masjid, that's also a sunnah. But before we talk about the appearance of the masjid, what are some of the things that we're supposed to be doing when going to the masjid? Number one is when you enter the masjid, you enter with your right foot. And you make the dua, Allahumma aftah li abwaba jannatik. Abwaba jannatik. Ya Allah, open the doors of your Jannah. So that's the first thing. The second thing, are you allowed to enter the masjid with your shoes?
The masjid or the hallways maybe, but not inside the musalla.
The Sahaba did used to pray and enter the masjid with their shoes. All right, listen to this. They used to enter the masjid with their shoes. It wasn't until a Sahabi, Ibn al-Mughira, he was the first to take off the shoe in the masjid. And it became a sunnah that everyone would take off their shoes in the masjid to maintain that area as a designated area for tahara. Oh, but in, let's say, in certain countries that they don't actually have a carpet for the masjid and it's just ground, you could actually go inside the masjid with your shoe. All right, you can go inside with your shoe. So that just keeping it clean, because that's what people pray on, and taking off your shoe is basically right there a practiced and an accepted sunnah that the Prophet ﷺ himself had approved. The Sahaba, when they used to enter Masjid al-Nabawi, they used to enter with their shoes. In fact, there was one time the Prophet ﷺ was praying with his shoe. And then Jibreel alayhi salam came and told him that there is qadha, that there is something impure on his shoe. So he took off the shoe while he was in prayer and put it next to him. Then when the prayer was finished, he looked back and saw that all the Sahaba had taken off their shoes. So he explained to them that the reason why I took off my shoe was because Jibreel told me that there was something impure on it, that I needed to take it off. In other words, they didn't have to do that. All right. Fixing the masajid, what does it mean? The Prophet ﷺ actually said, so this is a hadith where a Sahabi comes in, listen to this one. This man is a Bedouin. You guys know what Bedouins are? What are Bedouins? Yeah, they live away from the city, and they're constantly in search of food and water, but away from the city. So they'll have camels, they'll probably have sheep, and they keep on finding areas. So they don't build areas of shelter, but they actually keep on traveling to find shelter. They like their life that way. Now, this type of life had actually made them not have social skills. Not have social skills. Why? Because the only time that you would build social skills is when you deal with people. The more you deal with people, the better social skills you build. You learn how to be polite. You learn how to communicate, right? The people that stay isolated, they don't know how to be polite. They don't know how to do things. So this man is a Bedouin. I'll tell you guys a funny story later on about Bedouins. This man comes into the masjid and actually urinates, pees in the masjid. Can you guys imagine? Yeah, he pees in the masjid, exactly. This man, this Bedouin guy, the Prophet ﷺ is right there in the masjid. This guy basically goes and urinates in the masjid. The Sahaba, they got so outraged, they ran at him in order to stop him. So the Prophet ﷺ said, let him continue. Let him continue what he's doing, and just get a bucket of water and just clean the area. The Prophet ﷺ approached the man and explained to him that the masjid is a place of prayer, it's a place of purity, and started explaining to him, put his arms on him and started explaining to him. So the guy, he says, Ya Allah, let me and Muhammad enter Jannah, and all these guys, put them in hell. That's what he said. Like, you know what? Let him go to hell. Straightforward. Bedouins, they really have a lot of times the morality of the things that they live on. They're tough, very, very tough. You know, my first marriage proposal was from a Bedouin. This is really funny. We went, it was near Ramallah. And this woman, a Bedouin woman, they were Bedouins. And so we just went, we thought, hey, let's go and see how their lifestyle is, kind of like exploring. Right. They didn't used to live there when I was a young girl. So we did have other Bedouin friends. Okay. But that particular Bedouin family, they basically somehow they lived in the area that I was living in when I was a little girl. So that's near Ramallah. So we decided to just explore, have a conversation. And then the woman put her eyes on me. And she said, hey, is your daughter married? Asking my mom. I was only 18. And my mom said, well, she's not married. And she said, well, I've got my son. He has a first wife, and we're actually looking for a second wife for my son. So my mom was like, she's only 18. And she said, that's right. That's okay. He's actually looking for someone that age because he wants to get a lot of kids. And my mom was like, how old is he? She said, well, we don't know, but we're estimating 36. My mom was like, well, we actually live a different lifestyle. She said, it's okay. We'll buy her 60 heads of sheep. She can actually take care of those. And we'll make her a tent right next to us. That was my first marriage proposal.
I cannot believe you missed on that.
I know. Why would anybody miss out on that? Exactly. I had 60 heads of sheep, a very nice tent. What more do I want? It's really sad. It's unfortunately, the women in these days. Women these days, they just look for a luxury. I guess I was waiting just for a Tunisian to come over, huh? Allah al-Azim. Another woman, she was taking care, they were almost, I don't know, like maybe 90 sheep or something, but anyhow, and she was actually maybe mid-30s at the time. And because of the sun, they really look aged. They really look aged because of the sun. So I was talking to her and she said, and she was, I guess, telling me about her brother. Again, I don't know why, but maybe I should have actually somehow, gotten into a Bedouin
They
life.
see her come and they see
I have no
someone else, they
idea.
see her sheep.
Exactly. I guess I was attractive to the Bedouins and just deserved that lifestyle. So what happened was, she said, how about I get you, acquainted to my brother and you can get married to my brother. And I was like, well, wait a minute. No, I didn't know how to be polite. So I just said, well, we're actually working on getting my education. No, thanks. But she said, that's okay. My dad also made a condition in my marriage contract that I would get an education. I said, okay, fair enough. You got your education? She said, yeah, I got my education. And I was really baffled because the lifestyle that she was living doesn't seem like there was an education behind it. And I said, so what did you study? And she said, well, I learned how to count to 20. I said, you learned, that was your, she said, yeah, that was the education. I learned how to count to 20. So very, very simple people. All right. This is not at all, to condescend these people, because some of them are salihin. This is not to condescend. Some of them are salihin, but it's a very different lifestyle, a very, very different lifestyle.
You know what they do at it? They welcome their guests very well.
They welcome their guests very well, very humble people. And yeah, what was that? Very generous, very, very generous, and very simple people, very, very simple people, and people that are nice to be around. It's amazing. All right. What? A lot of wisdom, a lot of wisdom. All right.
They used to go there to learn Arabic, the real Arabic.
I'm not sure in Palestine, the Bedouins don't necessarily speak Arabic. Some of our Bedouins actually speak different languages like Syriac. So it's really different. And we have some Bedouins that are not even Arab. They're actually, they're called Nawar. So they originally came from India. I know it's really strange. India, out of all the people, out of all the countries, like all the way from India, they even look Indian. They have an Indian appearance. They live their own lifestyle. Yeah, they kind of live like a Bedouin, but they have their own lifestyle. All right. Should we stop right here for a little bit and go for, let's see, كراهة نشد الضالة.
Assalamu alaikum, Sister Aisha.
وعليكم السلام.
They're leaving.
That was random. Oh, they're leaving.
Yeah.
All right. So we're gonna pause right here, and then we're gonna start for the other part, which is the Aqeedah part.